Hey friends, Heath Home here, and welcome back to another Sunday Fun Day live stream. Today I'm going to be working on a deep house track with an old school kind of flavor, inspired by some of the pioneers of this genre, artists like Larry Heard, aka Mr. Fingers, Fred P, Kerri Chandler. That's the kind of vibe I'm going for today. I'll explain what I'm doing along the way, so whether you're completely new to music production and Ableton Live, or you're a seasoned professional, I'm sure there will be some key takeaways for everyone in today's stream. In the end, the goal is to inspire you to boot up Ableton and make some music. Feel free to drop any questions you have in the chat, and I'll do my best to answer them. So without further ado, let's dive right into today's stream. So just a little demo project here, just to give you also a feel of what we're going to be doing today. I kind of created a little idea. We're going to just walk through a couple of the scenes, also gives you a chance to, if someone's already in the stream, hi Chavi Diaz, I think you're already there, hola. If someone can let me know, so Chavi, if you don't mind, how the levels are, and then we get stuck into the new idea for today. So let's walk through these scenes of this kind of example. All right, so that was just a preview of kind of the direction we're going in today. As I said, we're tipping our cap to some of the masters of, obviously, a lot of these genres in electronic music. When we talk about deep house, of course, there's what I would say a very modern deep house these days. There's faster deep house. This is kind of a nod to the history, kind of where this genre kind of started, let's say, and that style of deep house. So I hope you enjoy the next hour or so. And that, as I said, was just a preview to what we're doing today. Chavi Diaz, sounding great. Thank you very much for letting me know. So let's open up a brand new project and let's get stuck in. So I'm going to leave my info view open down the bottom. So hopefully my webcam is in that area. And let's say we start by building up a little bit of a groove here. So I'm not going to change the tempo. As I said, I'm going to be doing sort of like deep house, and in this case, 120 BPM deep house. You could do 128. That did exist back in the day. There was fast deep house. There is fast deep house now, as there's a tempo at the moment, and BPMs are getting faster almost every year, it seems. So I'm going to start with a bit of a pulse. Let's have a kick drum. Let's use one of my favorite plugins down here, the DS Kick, the drum synth kick by Ableton. We're just going to drop that onto a track here. And we're going to keep things pretty simple for the moment with the kick drum. Pop on the pencil tool, and let's just drop in a nice 4/4 kick. We're also going to set up a scale here at the top. We might have G minor. We could also do major keys, but let's say for the moment we're going to have G minor, 120 BPM. Let's duplicate this kick loop, so we've got a few more kicks, and maybe we just add one kind of ghost kick somewhere here, just for a little bit of spice, but something very, very simple. Doesn't need to be anything too complicated here. Also want to leave space for other elements. In fact, so, maybe I'll just keep that off for now, because there's going to be plenty of other elements to kind of fill in the space. So we might do the next groove kind of element, and have a bit of interplay between the kick and some sort of percussion. So Command F in Ableton to bring up all, that's the shortcuts, or Control if you're on Windows in Ableton 12, a fast way to get the browser open and ask it to find most of your sounds and samples, either Ableton samples or your own if you've been tagging. So let's maybe have a cajon sound. We've got a few here to work with, so maybe even just the default one here. Pop that down. Let's also normalize it in the simpler. I want to work with it in MIDI. It is an audio sample of a cajon, a recording, but I want to use it inside a simpler as an instrument. So let's normalize the volume, and then let's just create a new MIDI clip and just a simple pattern. I'd like to have sort of a bit of a conversation between the kick and the cajon. Again, we can have the ghost note here in the cajon. That's nice. Move it around. Get something that's grooving away. And again, you know, we can, the more, I would encourage you always not to sort of stay in one bar loops. If you're programming like I've started here, don't keep yourself in a one bar loop. Think about probably minimum 4, sometimes 8, so you'll start to make decisions about having some interest and change in it rather than it just carrying on doing the same thing all the time. So here we could say we don't have that in the first bar, but in the second bar we do, and then we could duplicate that again, and we could look for, you know, another ghost note somewhere for a little bit more groove. Right? So it just means that you start to think about things in a way that is better for adding interest. Nice. So we've got this conversation between our kick and the cajon. Let's bring up our mixer here. Let's set the kick as the sort of like anchor track, so it's the loudest element for now. Bring the cajon a little bit in. Just a basic groove. As I said, I want to get a bit of a pulse down, a little bit of a feeling going on in that area. Let's say next up, Command F, let's have a tambourine. Let's kind of get some nice organic sounds. That's something that the cajon also brings, right? We're trying to bring in some nice kind of, we've got this DS kick here, which is very digital and very part of Ableton's instruments. It's not a sample, right? So we could, if we were really leaning towards Larry Heard and Kerri Chandler and those guys, they're probably working with drum machines in those times when they're making the early deep house. So we could absolutely 100% here be using drum machine samples like 808, 606, 909, 707. So if those kind of sounds are the sounds you like, then by all means put them in here. Just tell me a quick check of the chats. VNK, NVVN. Hi, how are you finding Ableton 12 versus 11? That's a great question. I think it's well and truly worth upgrading to, let's say, for a number of reasons. So very quickly, obviously you can see there's a brand new browser here, but there's a lot of MIDI tools which are quite amazing. If you don't have a big background in music theory, you can get a lot of great music ideas going in 12 quite easily with all the tools. Meld is a fantastic synthesizer that's added to the collection. Raw is amazing. And then there are lots of other little details that are popping up that make my life a lot easier. So for me personally, some of the things I'd wished for quite some time are now in 12 that weren't in 11. So it's definitely a step up. It's something that if you're using Ableton all the time as your software and making music, you will appreciate the changes that 12 brings to the table, let's say. So I hope that helps. Maybe one day I'll do a comparison. I definitely am due revisiting Ableton Live 12 and telling you what I've kind of discovered after using it for quite some months, probably nearly 6 months or something like that. All right, so now we're looking for a nice tambourine sample. This one will do fine. We're going to open up the MIDI track. Again, I'm going to use it like the cajon in a simpler. And actually, I'm going to use one of 12's tools here. So I've got tambourine into a simpler, lovely stuff, new MIDI clip. And what I'm going to do is use the generate part of 12 over here to generate some MIDI for the tambourine. So I'd really like a nice kind of pattern that goes on here. So by switching on rhythm down here in the generate tab on the left hand side here, I'm going to switch off generate for a second, and then I'm going to read what it's going to do for me. So this is something that I suggest you do when you're new to the 12 MIDI tools. I want rhythm, 100%. Do I want the pitch at C1? So that's right down here on the piano roll, right, where my kicks and basses live. So probably not. I'd like my tambourine in the middle of the piano. So I'm going to say C3 is the pitch that I'd like it to generate notes at that pitch. You can then see steps, pattern, density. I'm going to leave those alone. But down here, we can also see that the note length at the moment would be 1/8 notes if I clicked generate. Well, I'd quite like 16ths. I want a fast kind of shaker pattern, tambourine. So I'm going to change that to 16ths. Splitting notes, shift, frequency, velocity. The only other one I'm going to change here before I generate my pattern is velocity. So down here in the left, this is the range at the moment between the highest velocity and the lowest. I'd like lower because I'd like it to give me some quite low velocity notes as well, like ghost notes again. So we've got that nice vibe between the hardest notes and the softest notes. Now we can click generate, right? And then I'm going to wiggle the steps, pattern, and density till I kind of get the pattern I'm looking for. So if I go this way, see we get lots of options with how many steps we're populating. Already that's really nice and groovy. It's got me moving in the chair. Okay, if we do density, again, you can see we're taking away the how many notes are populating the clip. Pattern at the moment I'm really happy with, the steps I'm happy with, and down the bottom here you can continue to adjust things if you want. You can kind of shift the notes left and right. Right, and you can also, if you want, create little splits in here. So if there's anywhere you want to kind of split the note, you can drag up and make little fills like that. I'm going to undo that. I'm going to keep it nice and straight and 16th notes like we've got here. So we've now got this kind of original shaker pattern. Let's stretch it out again into a couple of bars. Maybe we'll go for 4. So let's bring the volume down on the tambourines, balance it in there a little bit. So a little bit of reverb on it from Ableton's A send to the default A return, just to add a little bit of atmosphere. Can also give the cajon a little bit. Right, so a little bit of a basic groove. Let's have another MIDI track. We're going to this is my choice. I'm kind of working with audio, but preference here is to put the audio in a simpler and work with it in MIDI as opposed to just dropping the audio on and working with it as a sample. This gives me more flexibility, so kind of happy about that. So now I'm going to go for a traditional drum machine sound from back in the day, back in these times when these guys were working, making the early deep house. While I had machine on my head, I typed in machine. So 909, I'm going to go for a 909 open hi-hats. It's a classic sound, just like that. Okay, so we're going to open up this MIDI track, drop one of those down, open up another MIDI clip, and in this case I'm going to go for a traditional just offbeat or upbeat hi-hat pattern. And what I do want to use down here is, again, from 12, the velocity, which is built a little bit different to how it was in 11. I want all the notes highlighted, and then down here I'm going to click randomize, and then I'm going to use the little box next to that just to back it off so it's not as extreme as it's given me. So I want a little bit of randomization, but not as much as it started with. Balance our volumes a bit. Let's duplicate this out. And let's have a little fill or so. With the tambourine, what I am going to do is just have a little refining of the sounds. Perhaps I adjust the pitch slightly to fit with everything else, and I can also bring the sample start point here. Just cutting that off slightly. Shaping the envelope a little bit, and this is the advantage of when you do put audio into an instrument, because now I can change the shape of the tambourine nicely in the instrument. So I'm changing the volume envelope here. The pitch of it, if I wish to pitch it down, or the other way, we could pitch it up. Just using my ears to hear if I kind of glue it nicely into the groove by pitching it up or pitching it down. Does it move more in with the other elements? For example, I think it fits better at +1 or -2. So maybe I'll go +1 for now. I'm going to use a bit of random panning so it kind of moves left and right a little bit. Nice, so it's got a little bit more vibe than it had a moment ago. So we've got a kind of groove rolling now. So now we can kind of move on to the sort of more musical elements we're looking for in this track. So let's have another MIDI track. And let's just, while we're here for a second, let's just do a bit of housekeeping. Most of the names are at the top of the track, but just in case, we're going to rename them and just make sure it's really clear what's on there. So no confusion in a moment when we're trying to sort of figure out what's playing where and when. And also I'm going to use my favorite color schemes as well so that I can easily identify all these sounds by eye as to which is which. So I have a system, percussion's orange, hi-hats are yellow, kick drums are red, and right through my workflow. So the open hi-hat will come in at some point when we're looking for that little bit of boost in energy. So now there's going to be a bit of keyboard playing today and a little bit of action in that area. So hopefully we get some nice kind of feeling from playing around and getting some organic results. What I want to show you is kind of something that I think, as I was thinking about using it and then kind of what are the benefits of using it. If you happen to have like a MIDI controller at home, or the MIDI controller that you have is only 25 keys, so something like an Akai MPK Mini, you're only looking at a couple of octaves. And what we're looking for today, or what I'm going to try and do in a moment, is I want some really rich chords that kind of span a lot of notes. And you either need to be a very good keyboard player, because you might need to play 5 notes at the same time, and you might need more range in your MIDI controller to be able to reach some of the higher and lower notes. So what I'm going to show you is a really great trick actually for working with a smaller MIDI controller, but also quite a nice way to work, again, if you're not an expert keyboard player and you want to build sort of chords. This is going to simplify that process. So what we're going to do is we're going to head to the MIDI effects, we're going to clear the browser, and we're going to grab the Chord device. And specifically in the Chord device, there are presets. So if we open it up, you can see down through here are a bunch of chord presets. I've saved quite a lot of my own in here over the years, and literally it's just a case of I made a chord and each of these shifts 1 to 6, I've moved the intervals to certain intervals that I particularly like. And then I've saved that. So this is one of my favorites. I called it the house chord, and all of the intervals that I've moved here make for a 4-note, 5-note chord. So now when I have this device, all I actually need to do is play 1 note at a time, which would be the root note, and this is going to add the layers on top of the intervals. So if I visually show you what this looks like, it would be, for example, if this is our root note here, so we're in C, for example, so this is the note we're playing with our finger, we've then got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We've got that interval. That's the first interval that's here, 10 semitones higher. We've then got a 14, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we're also playing that note, right, here. And then we've got a 15 here. And then we've got 19. So again, if we go from 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. So as you can see, this note actually, I'm not going to play. I'm playing with one finger, but I'm getting all of that. And as you could see, if you had a 25 note MIDI controller, you could just about do it, like with your finger at the very bottom and all those notes with the left hand and the other hands playing the higher notes. But this is quite easy. And again, you can play around with this. If you have a bit of music theory knowledge, you can make your own MIDI chord devices and save them and find some favorite intervals in here. So, you know, this is one that I've tried and tested. I really like the chord shape. And so I saved that chord device, as I said. So we don't need to do this. What you can see here, we're just going to play one note with our finger, and that is going to generate the chord, right? So if we stretch this out, okay, and we put an instrument on here, let's have the meld today for the synth. So we're going to take Ableton 12's lovely meld. We're going to switch off this empty chord device at the beginning here, and we're going to switch my house chord off from it, right? So if I now play on my keyboard, let's arm this track, and I play a C, right? I'm down here, so you can see I'm a MIDI keyboard. I don't need to do that with this clip, so I'm just going to push play on the clip because we've already got our chord shape. Let's bring the volume down. So you can hear that's a nice big thick chord. We know it's playing all of these notes right through. But the trick is now, if I stop that chord, right, and I turn on my house chord and I play a C, we should have the same sort of sound, which we do, which is great, right? So now I can be like, you know, jamming around. Right? So for me personally, I think it's a great tactic for, as I said, smaller MIDI controllers, and it's just a nice way to work. And particularly if, like I said, you can come up with your own MIDI chord devices, save them in the library. There's quite a lot from me over here. Over the years, I've kind of built a lot in here where I've just simply set up music theory, the intervals that I like, pop them into the library here, and now I can choose my own as well as the ones that come bundled with Ableton, right? So, and as I said, you don't have to be a super skillful keyboard player that can handle 5 or 6 notes at the same time. We're just going to play one note and come up with our kind of idea from there. So from that point, I'm just going to jam around a bit and see what I come up with as the idea for the chords to go with these drums. So bear with me, enjoy the music, and let's see what we end up with. Okay, just before we do that, we don't want that chord pattern anymore, so I'm just going to delete that because I'm not using that. That was just to show you what I was talking about. So that would be one idea already there, so we'll just use the capture button there. Come back to that in a moment and quantize it if we choose that one. Let's maybe just have a little bit of a play around, perhaps a bit higher, come up with some other ideas, see which one we choose. Okay, similar thing, let's capture that. I think I just made a mistake there actually. Oh no, I didn't, that's good. I thought for a second I overwrote the previous one. So we've now got a couple of variations here, which is nice. So we have a few choices here. They both can work, and perhaps we'll keep them both because maybe later we will find in the song a reason to change from one to the other. But hopefully you can see how nice the MIDI chord device is working with the keyboard and how it's kind of fun. I'm not thinking so hard about where my fingers are placed in chords. I'm just playing away with one finger or a couple of fingers, finding a nice movement through the notes of the scale and then recording it in. And I chose G minor before, so we can check here if we switch on scale in this MIDI clip, make sure we are in scale, which we are. So I kind of know the notes fairly well from G minor. So I've been kind of sticking here, as you can see, to the root, the G, and then I was playing the third, a little bit of the fourth, and also what else did we have then? We had the third, the fourth, and then the sixth, right? So we're sort of making that little bit of movement in that clip. And on this one, let's pop on the scale. We kind of started in C, which is in this case, the fourth. Then we've got the fifth, which is the D, back up to the sixth, and then into the root. So again, I've used the root up there, right? So let's do a bit of quantizing of these clips. So let's have a little bit of home tidying up here. 1 and 2, so we've got two totally different kind of chord progressions there. Nice and simple. Let's start with 1. And again, how we do quantization in Ableton 12, we pop down here to the tabs on the side here. Absolutely love this, for example. If you're working in 11, it was always that you needed to do Command U or Command Shift U and open up the menu and then make decisions. Here, we just need to go to Transform, click in the top box, choose Quantize, and now we've just got instantly, if we like, if everything's matching. Right now, I'm going to be moving the start of the note only, and I can just twist the knob down here and move it either 100% to the line or some percentage closer to the line. So I'm going to move it around. I don't want it exactly bang on the line. I quite like listening to this as well and choosing. Often it's maybe 90% nearer the line, or it could be as loose as 80 or 70. Depends on the feeling of the music, right? But we don't want to over quantize it, make it perfect in my case. And this is adding swing, vibe, feeling because I played it on my keyboard. So if we go looser, still sounding good, right? But it's got a bit more swing. If we were to zoom in, we are, as you can see, quite late from the line. So we're 78% closer to where the notes might play if they were 100%, right? So if we go tighter, we're now a little bit closer to that line. Okay. Let's do 2, so we've got that clip quantized as well. We could also bring it down or maybe bring the top notes here and pop them an octave lower. Or the Bs, let's see. Maybe I keep it up there on the 2, because if the lower I get, so I could lower all of these down to here, but I've got a bass line I want sort of in that area shortly. As much as I love that, which I do, I want to leave space for my bass, so we can move these down as simple as that, shift up and down arrow. So if we decide later we do have room to bring it down lower and it fits with the bass that I'm going to add, great. If not, it's going to make more sense playing up here in this range. And the other one might be the opposite. It might be clip 1 actually needs to go up, as it's just about going down again to where I'm aiming for a bass line, right? So let's see. So 2. And also what we can do is, if there's other MIDI to the left here that's useful, could be. So let's say we just copy one of those down lower, and we're going to call that original, keep that preserved. And then in the area I'm working over here, I'm just going to right click and I'm going to crop that area so I don't have to see all the rest of that MIDI, just the notes I've chosen. So that's this selection. Let's quantize it. A little bit of manual adjustment here and there is fine as well. Okay, now let's work on the meld. So I'm happy with for the moment, my MIDI choices. I'm going to do the same with the 1 here, although I don't think I really need to, as there's kind of not much I want to keep over here as the original. So I think I will just crop the 1 to the selection of notes like so, and we'll go from there. And now I'm going to come down here and I'm going to work on the synth a little bit. And because I've chosen this oscillator, the sub oscillator, I might actually put these MIDI notes up an octave in the clip 1. Modulation to it as well. Let's maybe go for like a tremolo feel, so LFO modulating the volume of this synth. Put in the second oscillator. think that sounds the nicest. Detune them a bit from each other. We want to bring the volume down on this second oscillator. I just want to layer it for a little bit of interest. Just checking again, might change my mind on the oscillator type. So I want that really subtle. Right, it's that quiet. Just adding a bit of character on top of oscillator A. Oscillator A is the main oscillator. And if I turn off my chord device, right, that's what happens. Okay, so let's now try what could be an option here, which would be a root note bass. So we might get the root notes of the 1 for the moment, which we're working on. So let's pop in a new MIDI track. I have gone to the trouble myself, which I think is a good idea for you guys and girls, and that is to, you know, go through, as you can see, in the case of the meld, I kind of was making my own patch from scratch, but sometimes I use Ableton's presets as well, so the different sounds that Ableton offers you in all the different instruments. So I have saved quite a few of the bass sounds that Ableton offer. So if you filter the browser to bass, all of these basses here I've kind of marked with the blue dots, and then they're up in my collections here in instruments, so it's just a fast grab to one of these sort of bass lines here. So I'm going to copy over the MIDI clip on the meld, the chords at the moment, over to here, and drop it there. And literally, because it is only a melody, the chord device is making the chords, we can actually just highlight this melody and then bring it down a couple of octaves into this range here, and we now should have a bass line that kind of follows the chords. And we'll try that out and see what that sounds like. Perhaps we don't need to try and play another bass. Perhaps this will feel the best. And then we can try out. One of my favorites in this list would be probably this one here, and I think it sounds quite appropriate for the sort of, again, direction of music I'm aiming for here. So we could also do the same with 2, copy it over. Not as successful. It's a little bit the notes that I played here, or the pattern, it needs a little bit of adjustment for the bass line, but it could still. And we also have the option here of arming up the bass here, and then I'm just going to have a quick look at the chat for a moment. You can grab Waves, Flow, Motion, FM Synth free for the next 24 hours, so a bit of a promo they're doing. Well, thanks VNKNVVN. I have many synths, my friends, so I have no need to grab another one, but thanks for mentioning it. If somebody out there wants to check that out, go for it. Right. So yeah, what I was thinking here is I could also kind of not follow the chords with the root note bass, copying that MIDI chord over. Instead, come up with a new bass line. So let's just bring my MIDI down a bit. Maybe one more. switch off a couple of those distractions. So just going to remind myself what I did follow here, which was C, G, E, D. Okay. I understood what was going on there. I could still hear that clip. Now we're better. All right, let's try that again. Okay, lost my way a little bit at the end, but there was a good take in there, I think. Let's try this one. One of these. Okay, 1 second here. Let's move across a little bit so we are hitting that on the 1 where it was coming in, and see what that sounds like. So I'll just mute these 2 notes over here. Okay, so that's not right either, so it starts from here. That's right. Okay, so C to G to E to D, and then back to C again. This should be closer. Okay, let's check the one before it. So it's just an idea. Instead of copying the notes over, I'm kind of freehanding this a little bit. So why would that be drifting out of time? Let's just have a look at that. Feels like it's going slightly out of time. Okay, let's look at that for a second. Just investigating something here. Okay, so let's say perhaps for a second we're just going to check it like this. Let's add a bit of quantization here. So as you can hear, that kind of moved the notes too much. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to work on the notes individually a bit. So this one. This one. This one could also come here. Okay, so let's work on the synth a little bit of the bass line, and we might make it a bit more pluckier. So I think it was worthwhile in this case to kind of play the bass in. I followed the chords, but I didn't actually just copy the MIDI over. What was the advantage of that? So originally I tried the chord over here and basically copied it over, turned it into a root note bass. The thing is that it follows the chords, but now it does follow the chords, but as I've played it in, it has its own little bit of swing and vibe and velocity that's different to the chords. So I hope that makes sense. There is a change there, rather than it just being a copy of what happened here. It's actually doing its own thing, and it's why I ended up looping just this area for the moment, because the timing is different here, and I could kind of hear that the bass that I played in wasn't quite working so well with the second bar. So if we just test that again now, so if we put that whole scene works well. So let's copy clip 1, and if I loop up the second bar 3 to 4 with my played in bass, it doesn't work. Right, so that's what I was kind of hearing before. That took me a moment to figure that out. So for now, I'm just going to stick with the chords in the first area there. It's okay, there was a variation here. Well, I can vary this a little bit, but that variation timing wise at the moment doesn't work with my hand played in bass line. So I hope that makes sense. That was the reason I kind of did what I did there. Okay, so I did make a little folder with some sounds in it. So I want to have a look at that little folder for a second, and let's see if we can bring in something to add in here that's kind of interesting. So my idea is to kind of keep it quite sort of summery. So there's lots of nice kind of audio loops here, which again is quite tempting just to add those in and say game, job done and happy days sort of thing. But we might try and see if we can do something a little bit more with those, and sort of turn them into our own, so we can kind of learn from that exercise as well. So let's say we've got the bass over here, just again doing a little housekeeping. And over here, I'm going to try this one because I quite liked, oops, so undo that, open up the MIDI track, pop that down here. Okay. So what we want to check here is a bit about the tuning of the sample. It does say C major is the tuning, so we can check that in a moment. If we're going to add audio in the sampler and play it up and down our keyboard, it's a good idea to understand, the tuning of it and try to make sure that when we're playing a C, we are getting a C. So a couple of ways to do that, and this is a sort of standard workflow for using a simpler or sampler, should I say, that, as I said, if you want to play it up and down your keyboard, a very good idea would be to know that we can do that, and when we play a C, we're going to be getting a C inside that sample, right? So one way to do it is make a little MIDI clip here, put a note in the middle of the piano on C3, and then we can hit play. And we can see here at the moment, the part of the clip it's playing is actually giving us an E. And if we move, You know, so it depends where we're working in the sample, but as you can see, there's quite a difference, right? So it's a good idea to understand that. So maybe if I'm playing from this point, I'm currently getting an E, not a C. So if I chose that as my starting point, so I'm going to pick my favorite bit. So let's say I make it easier and we keep it on an E. And let's make a little loop here. So if we've now made our life a little bit easier because we can see on the tuner that we're getting an E for, we know up here in our clip we're playing a C, but we're actually getting an E. So what we're going to do is go into the back end of the sampler, or this is the simpler, but it is a sampler, and we're going to bring it down 4 semitones. So we should see now a C on the tuner. Right, so we're now matching, which is great because that now means if I go and play a melody up and down my keyboard, when I'm playing a C, I'm getting a C. When I'm playing a G, I'm getting a G, and so on and so forth, right? So now we are able to replay this up and down the keyboards. Doesn't like that. So that's one idea. I mean, that sample's ready to rumble where it is, but I'm going to try another sample here just to check, because I think there might be something that I prefer, kind of how it's going to fit with what we've got so far. So let me try this one as an alternative. And again, I want to create a new MIDI track. I'm going to be working with this one in a simpler sampler workflow. So down we go there. It's low in volume, so let's normalize it. So we've got a bit of energy there. Similar checks again, so we understand what's going on. I'm going to pop a tuner there. We can copy over our C clip here. Check it out. So this one's pretty good. It's sitting on a C more or less already. So I'm going to move my playhead around a bit. So as you can see in this case, it's a little bit easier to work with as it's giving us a C. All the pretty consistent. Any little tuning differences are not too much. So this one definitely plays easily up and down the keyboard without too much hassle, in the sense of it keeping in tune with everything else. The other sample doesn't quite fit with my current music idea that I have. This one may work a little bit better, I think. So let's just bring again a bit of energy down so we can kind of hear. Okay, that was getting close. Okay, let's have a look at that for a second. This last note's not going to work. I think we need to be up in this octave in a moment, so yeah, somewhere up here, so we're probably going to shift everything up in a moment. Something like that, that's kind of nice. And then we can probably take all of this and maybe try up as high as here. Also needs quantizing, but for the moment it's a little bit of an idea, and actually I didn't in the end want that right up there, so let's try this. So hopefully you can also see, like, sometimes it takes a little while, you know, obviously I'm doing this in real time here, but the benefits of playing things in and just sort of setting yourself up with this kind of workflow and having a MIDI controller and sort of getting into the feel of what's going on. Hopefully this is translating well in this stream, but you know, for me, it kind of generally speaks for itself to sort of try and do this to get away from, you know, sort of programming and things and hoping that, you know, the idea sounds good. In this case, playing around, noodling on the keyboard a bit kind of brings a different set of results. So this note, I want to move here. A little bit of manual adjustment here and there. Okay, now we can work down here a bit. 1 second, I've been ignoring the chat. Lauren, lovely to see you here on this Sunday. Yo, as usual, I keep some time to see this online. Thanks again, Heath. You're very welcome, Lauren. Lovely to see you there in the chat and in the stream. Understand you'll probably be checking it out on replay. And by the way, guys and girls, if you are in the stream with me today, I hope you are enjoying the content. I hope you're finding this useful and beneficial, even if you're brand new to Ableton Live, or you're a seasoned pro. We're kind of trying here to come up with a nice deep house idea, nodding our head to some of the legends that's kind of pioneers of this genre, such as Larry Heard and Fred P, who's still going super strong. So if you're into this kind of sound, definitely check out those names. And this is what we got so far. Let's just take out track 10, as we're not working with that at the moment. So now we need to make this a little bit more interesting. Let's have a little bit of delay and some reverb. Also, we're going to process it a little bit, just clean this sound up, get it working the way we want. Put the sound in the space we want to put it in. And let's try duplicating this clip down so that we've got, again, a variation here. And this variation we might try 1 octave lower and see if it does fit. So let's try and make this, again, this little piece over here. This nice kind of synth that's in a sampler working around this interesting sound. It's called TI. It sounded like this. It was a sample, right? So it's kind of a brassy, trombone-y sort of sound. And we've kind of used that in this case to kind of make a bit of a melody here. So let's say I'm going to kind of treat it separate to the send and return reverb delays. I'm going to give it its own hybrid reverb here. And maybe the echo before the hybrid or after. Also get onto the meld for a little bit and clean this up a little bit as well, make it sit nicely in the mix. It's got a lot of low ends, so let's get it out the way of the bass. kind of going along okay here. So let me just check one thing. I just want to check and remind myself in our scale, we do have F, which is great. So just back on my kick over here, just to see the tuning, I did leave it in F. So that is fitting with our scale. It's a good idea to sometimes check things like that, so we know that the kick is inside our scale, which is meaning it's gluing nicely. I don't know if the Mel 2 is currently fitting. Not at all, so we kind of are not going to use that theme at this point in time. And that's what happens sometimes. You know, we created an option there, but I developed everything around the 1. So for now, that is the main theme on the chords. Okay, so maybe we can find a nice percussion to sort of add in here to the groove a little bit. We could do with sort of maybe a little bit of something sort of organic that kind of gives us, we don't have a clap or a snare at the moment, but maybe we can use something like a break beat and even slice it up or chop it up or add some percussion here. We've got the cajon, which is sort of talking. So our low end currently are these 3. And that's our drums at the moment. So, you know, maybe we can have something in here that gives us a little bit more, as I said, sort of, perhaps we'll steal a clap or a snare from a real drum break or have some sort of groove. That could work. This is interesting. Let's bring that over to an audio track. By the way, those drum breaks are inside the vintage breaks folder of the break selection by Magic Pack, which again, if you're an Ableton Suite user, you would have access to that. Pretty much everything here so far, apart from this sample I used over here, and actually that could well be coming from Ableton as well. Let's just hot swap it to see where that appears. I know that it's over there, but I'm just wondering where it is in my library. So we can check that. So let's just try that again. And then we'll right click on it and say, yeah, maybe not that way around. Try it again over here. I'm just checking because it could well be that that's also something that you have access to in the packs, rather than it being something outside of Ableton Live's elements. But to be honest, I'm not finding it easily. So yeah, I can write it in the comments or the description below. But most of everything here, these samples for sure, they're just basic cajons, tambourines, 909s, and a lot of all that content. It comes bundled with Ableton Live, so you should be able to pretty much make exactly what we've got here with material from Ableton Live. So in this drum beat that I've grabbed this break, let's listen to it on its own. So it's got the kick drum in there as much as it's got the sort of hi-hats and snare drums and stuff in there. So what we might try and do is take away the kicks where we can. So we're going to pop into here, go clip, and also just I will check the timing. I mean, this is the sort of reason for using elements like this, is the fact that we're bringing something organic into the drum group here, and as it's played probably by humans here, we've got this kind of soul to it and magic that it isn't perfect timing. So if we look here at the last beat where there is a kick, it's late. So we could just try nudging that with warping onto the line, and I think you'll find, yeah, we might have to do a bit more. Sometimes you only need to move a little bit of timing, but in this case, it's drifting around a little bit, so we might have to sort of treat it in sections, but we also don't have to use all of the 8 bars, so we could kind of have like just a couple of bars of this loop. These 2 bars are pretty close with the timing. Do we need all of these sections? Are there much differences in here in the different fills and patterns? Maybe we want to check that. It looks pretty similar, what's going on inside the loop as far as the drum playing goes. I can see there's certainly velocity and differences in each bar, so maybe we'll just work with this. As I said, I don't think we need the full 8 bars, so I'm not going to fix the timing outside of this area, and I'm going to work with the timing that's in this area here and see how it sounds. So I was talking about sort of like taking out maybe some of the kicks where they are, then where we don't need them. So I've switched on envelopes here, going to come down the bottom here, chosen clip, and I've chosen gain. Now I'm going to turn on my pencil tool, and I'm just going to notch out where the kick drums are. So there's one happening on all of the strong beats, 4/4, and I won't take out the ones for the moment where the snares are on the 2 and the 4, but I will where they are on the other strong beats. And we can copy and paste this over just as a rough guide to start with. And then we can kind of get this a little bit smoother so we don't have those clicks. So let's do it 1 bar at a time. So just moving where I've notched it away. So already you can kind of hear that's kind of removed in the main. The little pops and clicks that are happening. And if you want, you can really do this super pro where you take out points and really smooth it out. And you can also hover under the line, hold down Alt or Option on your keyboard and make these sound very, very smooth. So you should not have any pops and clicks, and it will sound exactly how you want it to sound where you've notched things away, right? So I thought I might as well do it while I was talking about it in this case. And again, we can kind of copy that over if we like into the next area, see if it kind of works, and adjust it a bit. So there's a little bit of movement needed, so let's just work on this side now. A lot has to do with the end that's making that. In general, it's actually pretty good. It's this one that's kind of interesting. Okay, that's one fixed. This one's interesting, maybe that's what happens just before it. Or it's in the sample. But I feel like it's the other end, so let me try that. Gone, yep. Perfect. We've kind of smoothed out that, so as I said, we're without our pops and clicks now, which is nice. So we've cut away the kick drums, a little bit of work there to tidy that up. Let's take out our musical things for the moment. The next thing I'm going to do in this section, loop it back up to the full section I was using. Let's try the pitch a little bit. Okay, pitch where it is okay. I'm going to change the beats algorithm to this area in the preserved transients, and now I'm going to bring down the preservation of the transients a little bit and see if I can kind of gate this off a little bit. So now we've got pretty good control of that groove. Now I'm just going to tweak the timing of it slightly. Add a few warp markers. By the way, in 12 in audio, you can also sort of highlight this section here, open up the transform, and you can adjust the quantization down here of the audio clip as well if you wish. If you have, like, you know, so we could say now apply, and as you can see, you can tighten it up just like that, which is super fast. And as you can hear, it's very, very quantized now, and that's kind of what I was talking about before, about keeping the soul and the magic. So now I could try again with lower quantization amount. The grid is set to 16th note. So if you're working with these audio loops, you can tighten them right up to go with the rest of the groove if you wish. That's not bad. You can hear here, it's much more looser, much more groovier, because I've only quantized the start of each bar just to tighten that up. And manually I've sort of taken control of it rather than automatically. And if I want to keep going further, I could do the snare drums as well. So I could sort of take the snare on the 1.2 and the 1.4 here and just bring them in a little bit to the line, sort out the drift where it's drifted sort of early and late. That one's kind of okay. And again, we're sort of like minimum interference versus maximum interference, just a little bit of tidying up. I don't think this was necessary, but I just wanted to show you. I might undo this in a moment, but I've literally just kind of tightened up not only the start of each phrase, each bar, but also the hits where the snare drums are in between. So let's listen to it now. And already for me, it starts to feel a bit stale. So I'm going to take all those away. I'm quite happy with just the timing adjustment of the start of the first beat of each phrase, because I want that really organic kind of feel. Okay, let's trigger it all in time. So we can just say we've got a nice organic drum loop here, played by real people with that real people feel. We've just adjusted it slightly, and all that work I was doing where I took the kicks away, cutting it away with volume, we're making space for other parts. We're making it fit with what we have. We're making it fit in there nicely. It's got an EQ on it. It's also cut any low end that we don't need. All of this mud down here. I'm just going to copy this down again, the same drum loop, and let's just listen to it in isolation for a second. So you got that real kind of disco-y clap going on in this area here. And what I really liked about it was that the kind of hi-hats that happen in here. So we could do a whole other version where, again, we're using the same techniques as I did to take away the kick drum, but this time we take away other elements as well, leaving us with just what we're looking for. So we might do one version, and all I want to do is isolate that little disco clap. So let's find where that is again. Okay, so it's the double clap in here. So with this one, I'm going to take everything out except for that, pretty much, and the other side of it. So we could make just a loop where it just has that, and it's kind of just that. And we might also kind of move that over. You might have it just coming in like that every so often. We could put a nice delay on that. Right, so we're just creating our own little, drum pieces. So we might actually use that later as a nice little fill from within that break, that whole drum break. So we'll give it another color, and we'll just mark in here that this is like clap fill. So I hope if you're watching this that you find this really interesting and useful, because it's a great way to, it has so many benefits for taking audio loops and making them your own, choosing what you want out of it, dialing it right in, and also something that I see a lot where people build up lots of layers of percussion of drum loops in audio. This would mean that I could decide to have these hits that I've just isolated and make sure that it doesn't clash with all the other audio loops I have. So each audio loop I choose, that's what I want from that audio loop, and the rest of it's silent. And that's really important, because if you just have them all playing fully all the way through, there's probably many clashes, many overlaps, and you don't even hear sounds that are happening inside that audio loop because something else is happening at the same time in another audio loop and we don't hear it. So big tips there on how to help your mix as well and your project sound a lot better. So if I do use that clap fill, I definitely would add a delay to it. I could automate that inside the clip or on the track. So I'd like it to sort of keep going a little bit, but I'm happy with that. Now I could do another one. And in this case, I'm going to do another move that I kind of heard. So I'm going to go clip, gain again. And this time I'm going to try and isolate these little hi-hat kind of slides that happen every so often, like kind of here in the clip, and make another version that just kind of focuses on those elements. And again, we probably could just have one bar of that, or 2 bars we've got here. And then we could always dial these in, as I said, if you're like me and you like to make things really nice and accurate. You can click in here, get all of these, making sure there's no pops and clicks and that they fade down nicely. And as you've seen me do, you can kind of add points, take points away, put a curve in here if you want, and really control what you want to keep, what you want to remove. That has a different feel to it now for this. I like it better like that, but just wanted to show you. This one's good. This one's also good. We could also get a little bit more wilder. We could also go down here and we could say, what about now a bit of transposition? So we could take some of these little hi-hat areas we've isolated and re-pitch some of them. So maybe here we go down a couple of semitones. Right, so you can always let your imagination and come up with something, you know, that again, that audio loop is no longer what it started out with. None of it is kind of the original loop that came from the Ableton pack. It's all gone in a different direction that makes it our own and it makes it fit our project here. And we've got some variations and some cool ways we can use it, right? So well worth doing in my opinion. So that's another one here that's a bit different to the first. So let's just come back to our main loop. The reason this one also feels a little bit different is it's kind of three bars, which makes it kind of go a little bit different each time it comes around with the others that are changing at 2 and 4 bars. So if we were to loop this just at 2 bars, it would sort of like, I think, make a bit more sense. What we could also do is kind of stretch it out to 4 bars, and we could just kind of like copy this, duplicate it over to fill in the next parts, but that didn't quite work. We want it to kind of reset itself there. That's correct. We'd need to do something a little bit different over here, so maybe we take these notes and we just try playing around with that little end part here. We could use again some of Ableton's tools. We could invert those few notes. Going to make my own little transition around here. Or maybe we bring it forward a bit. Yeah, I don't like that E flat. Better on the D. Couple of little adjustments here. All right, so let's maybe see if there's room for another little nudge here, a little musical idea that we can kind of have in here for a bit more variety, something else, if there's room for it harmonically. Hopefully also, if you do if you're just arriving to the live stream now, obviously, if you go back towards the start and see sort of how I've been building up the layers, hopefully something again as well that you can really take away that's really important is where each thing is living. That is each instrument. If we look at this, the meld, which is the chords, they're kind of living right smack bang in the middle of the piano. Great. If we look at the sort of melody that I've been playing around with, that's living another octave to 2 octaves higher than that. So we're sort of like spreading everything out musically, so it's not all sitting in the same space on the piano, which makes our mixing really difficult, and it makes our tracks a lot weaker and a lot more confused and a lot more muddy than we want them to be. Ideally, we want to, if we were looking at our keyboard and all of the octaves, we'd sort of say kick and bass are way down on the left there, and kick is probably lower than the bass, or the bass is lower than the kick. Kick in C0 to 1, bass in 1 to 2, 2 to 3 octaves I'm speaking about, that might have the low notes of a pad or something like that, or our chords, and then 3 to 4, there's our main chords, vocal, lots of the drum sounds, and then 4 to 5, high melodies, bits like that, and we're spreading everything out. And that's another thing I see a lot in and listen to a lot in other people's musics that people that I'm coaching and helping out with their production in Ableton Live. They have everything in the same octave. So if you can start doing that, you're again going to end up with a much more better result. Right, so instrument time, something else perhaps. Let's see. Let's filter it down to brass. Maybe this one. Again, another Ableton instrument. synth. Let's bring down a few things so we got a little bit less confusion. Something super simple. There we go. That was the one. Just checking if these would play together. They may not. Okay, let's get onto our lovely sort of brassy trumpet sound. Let's process it a little bit. Nice. Quite like this to be almost sort of dreamy, washed out like it is now. Right, without the delay, with the reverb, sorry. Very dry, very in your face. Right, this lovely kind of spatialness to it now. I'm going to create another one of these drum groove tracks as well, my organic drums. Actually, I'm going to rename that, it's a bit confusing. Let's just call it the groove drums. We know they're played by a real person. The disco clap for me, it's a bit much, so I'm actually going to loop just a very small. And then if I want the disco claps, they can be in this clip here. Right, so let's just put a note here that has plus claps. Okay, so this over here, it's a nice little riff with the trumpet or brass. Let's duplicate it, copy it down so we've protected sort of the original take, because I'm going to crop this take here and I'm going to duplicate it, and I'm just going to see like a couple of ideas here. So if it's muted in the second part, trying something out where these two instruments have a conversation, so they might play together, but one is where the trumpet is, then the other sound is not, and vice versa. Right. Let's maybe try this down an octave. All right, so we're cracking on there. I'm also thinking like I might find another break. I still do like those grooves, but they're perhaps not the groove drums, let's say, that I've done all this work on. All the work I've done on it is still absolutely relevant, and I'd want to do it with every single drum break, but I possibly might like a different sort of break in here, kind of hear something else, a bit more percussion or something like that. Again, sometimes when I use a drum break, I want the claps and snares from it and all the sort of organic drum kit, acoustic kit kind of sounds, but we could also have something here that could be some really nice congas or percussion that we could do ourselves that's kind of less busy than that. I'm going to have a little tap into this again for a second. So let's see if I can find a little bit of inspiration for a second, and then we go from there. So let's say loop. Yeah, we might just start again there. So we'll say loop, and then let's say conga. Not finding any. Okay, fair enough. About there. Yeah, maybe. No, that's a bit too much. No, this is kind of what I'm thinking, maybe. So we'll definitely have that over. We might be using that one. It's a nice one shot. We can make that into our own pattern. Maybe just work with those two that I've sort of put on that audio track. Okay, nice. Also, that one we have. A bit too busy. Okay, that's also proper. Nice. So we've got some good options here. This is kind of what I think would be the layer that kind of tops off this idea and keeps it kind of very Larry Heard-ish. So we've got lots here. We'll make these our own in a second. So let's say we strip back the music a bit. Don't want all the extra percussion really, so that one's already out. That one's very deep. That's a bit more usable. This one's a bit too deep, it's getting in the way of the bass and the kick. So that one. Not quite the rhythm. Okay, so out of these three, 4/4, shall we say? Yeah, this is, I think, my favorite. And I kind of want the audio, as I said, I want this kind of really nice conga recording. Happy with the timing. I mean, again, it's nice and organic. It's not perfect on the grid, but it's adding lots of nice groove, and we can kind of, again, take it and really control the transient preservation if we want, so we can thin it out a bit or make it more fuller. So we've got control of that. We can also repitch it a bit if we wish. We could also quantize it, but I really like the organicness of that. And it now sort of sounds like the kind of music I was kind of inspired to be doing today. It's just got that organic component to it. So let's just clean it up a bit with some EQ. All right, progress. We like progress. All right, so let's have a little listen to our drums. So the cajon and the congas fit together nicely. And then musically, right, ladies and gents, well, I'm kind of going to call that a wrap for what's in my head today in this style of a deep house track. We've got more than enough parts there to come up with a nice little arrangement and jam this idea out into some different scenes that would take us from this sort of peak loop here, the kind of maximum loop where everything can play together. We could add a vocal here. I also had an idea for an arpeggio that could come in here as well as another element. They would be two things I might consider here, and then I'd be looking to kind of get some more variations here where, you know, the bass changes from its current pattern to maybe something new. So we've got this theme here, but we might have another theme, and similarly across the rest of the track where the musical elements are as well as the drums. So think about themes, think about how are you going to evolve that bass line or the meld. Let's just change the meld to, say, chords. Okay, and this is kind of a melody here. So, you know, think about how you're going to evolve that. So in the melody, we have got a simplified kind of loop where there's a space missing. Then we've got this other version here. So there's things to play around with. Also, this is my trumpet riff over there. All right. So how did this track start today? It started with the DS kick, a nice simple 4 on the floor pattern. Did consider a ghost note, but I was aware I was going to get the kick, having a conversation with some percussion. That ended up being a cajon. And then I had a bass line, which I've played in following the chords. I did start with copying the chords over, but didn't feel it kind of sounded quite right. It was very sort of static and still. So I kind of followed the chords, but did it playing on the keyboards and recorded that in. And that was our bass line. The chords did come before that. And the trick behind the chord track here that's, I think, really interesting for all you out there, and you might find beneficial, well, I would hope so if you're using Ableton Live, is this MIDI effect here, the chord MIDI effect that's providing the intervals. And all I'm actually doing, as you can see here, is playing single notes, and I'm getting a 5 stacked note chord. So by having these intervals, also the meld is from scratch, so I just made it sound the way I wanted it to sound. Then I added some tambourines, so some drums, and we used 12's nice generate pattern tool to get this nice tambourine pattern. Then a classic upbeat 909 hi-hat. Then I added a melody, which is a nice sort of brassy sample that's gone into a sampler. We made sure it was in tune, so it's this sound over here. And then last but not least, I've also grabbed a brass quartet instrument here and then played another little riff to go on top of that. And yeah, there we have. And then I was playing around with some audio loops to try and get some nice sort of organic drums and breaks to go in. We still don't have a clap here as well, by the way, or a snare. We do if we use, you know, this track over here. We've got this, some variations, including this fill. So yeah, I might work on that. I don't always have to have a clap or a snare in my track. I'm sure you don't either, but sometimes it can be nice. Sometimes we can take it from a real acoustic loop and add that as the quality, or we might just program a clap or a snare here or layer some of them together. Just looking at the chat there, Golden Tongue, I had a dream I had Ableton 12. Well, yeah, I mean, it is a dream that hopefully you can make a reality. It's pretty much all of this you can do in, there's nothing really here you can't do in Live 11. The chord track obviously has meld, so we would need to switch that to operator or wavetable, which are amazing synths. Everything else pretty much here, just checking. Nothing really apart from the meld, which, as I said, we could very easily switch away. And then the way I came up with the tambourine pattern, okay, but then this is, you know, just a MIDI tool that allows us to come up with that pattern. So, you know, there's not too much trickery going on there, that you could very easily apply this to Ableton 11. Thanks. Looking forward to the arrangement. Should I arrange it then, Chavi Diaz? Is that what you were hoping I do? Let me know in the chat if you would like to see this track arranged. I hope you've enjoyed today's live stream. I hope this is for those of you who are deep house heads, and for those of you who appreciate the deep house from its beginning, from its roots, the Larry Herds, the Kerri Chandlers, the Fred P's of the world who are kind of doing this. Also reminds me a bit of Jimpster, some of the organic kind of like deep house guys that are making house music. If this was house music, what would be the differences? That could be an interesting discussion, right? Perhaps it would be not as deeper chords. Maybe we do faster stabby chords. We'd have a bit more BPM, perhaps a bit more drums as well, layers of drums to get more energy up in there. But you know, these are typical moves in the deep house world. These kind of lovely, rich chords. And I also went kind of summary by including this. All right, so Chavi Diaz has a request. Oh yes, all right, looks like I'm going to be arranging the track. Obviously, if there's more of you out there as well that back Chavi up and say, look, Heath, you need to arrange it, then I'll pencil that one down for perhaps the next Sunday's live stream. So as always, it's been a big pleasure on this Sunday afternoon to share this idea with you, working in Ableton Live. I hope you found it beneficial. I hope you can take away some ideas, inspiration, learnt some tips and tricks from this video, and I hope you can join me in the next one. There's also a lot of videos on the channel already, many hours of content with other projects and arrangements. So I will definitely post a video when I can at the end here, at the end card, of what I think you should watch next if you haven't previously watched videos on this channel, and if you have, also what you could check out that kind of ties into all of this and inspire you with other music ideas. Thanks again. Have a great Sunday. Take care, and I will catch you in the next live stream, and keep on creating. Bye for now. See you, everybody. Ciao.